Hi, everybody. This week's episode of North State Rocks podcast features Liz Ammon, who is a ag teacher and FFA leader at Lassen High School. She was voted Ag Teacher of the Year. To put that in perspective, there's 1,100 ag teachers in the state. She's one of 9 that's gotten that award, which is incredible. And then she shared that it's actually the only way you can get that is to be nominated by one of your students, and then you're interviewed by student panels from the entire state. And she won that honor. So that's who you're going to get to hear from today. They're doing incredible cutting edge things with all sorts of different opportunities for kids in their program. Everything from taking rabbits to the fair, to steers to the fair, to egg science teams, partly pro teams. Take a listen and enjoy.
Welcome to the North State Rocks podcast. Discover the hidden gems and extraordinary people of California's North State region. Join Perry Thompson, CEO of Hat Creek Construction and Materials, as he explores the vibrant communities and interesting neighbors that make our region a great place to live, work, and play. Tune in, be inspired, and rediscover the North State. This is your community. This is your story.
Okay, so Liz Ammon, Lassen High School. It's been a bit getting you on the podcast. Really excited to have you. Of course, we're post 2 weeks. This will get distributed sometime after that. But you and I talking right now, we're a couple weeks post fair.
Correct.
So
yes.
As a highly kick-ass ag teacher, I know that that's a lot. Prepping for that fair, getting through that fair. So looks like your kids did incredible. Could you kind of just give us a recap of the fair and kind of how that works since we're a couple weeks out of it?
Yeah, no worries. So we actually had 159 total 4-H and FFA members this last fair show, which are, in my opinion, that's pretty good numbers for our entire county. And of those 159 members, 60 of them were just from Susanville, FFA. And
Amazing.
So, yeah, Mike and I and Becky had our hands full with a very, that's the largest number that we've ever had as far as students showing. And without poultry being able to show this year at fair, we were concerned that the numbers would be a little lower, but it was actually the highest we've ever had. So very blessed. And those kids did phenomenal. When I talk about a really enjoyable, easy, stress-free kind of affair, minus a couple, issues, of course, that come and go, we were pretty blessed. And the auction was remarkable. The students had over $430,884 brought in by the sales and support of our local community. So pretty incredible that many community members stepped up and really helped our students out with all of their hard work.
Yeah. So first of all, that's incredible. 60 from Susanville FFA alone is
a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. I don't think people recognize it. So you split that load. You mentioned 2 other names. Can you elaborate on kind of what their roles are? And I know obviously you're an ag teacher and highly involved, but tell me about them and how much support you have overall.
Okay, so we had a teacher leave this year and a new teacher come in. So believe it or not, Mike Somerville and I were completely responsible prior up to fair for all 60 of those kids. And we split it evenly, 30 apiece. And Mike was in charge of all of the steer kids and the pig kids. And I was in charge of the lamb, goat, and rabbit kids. And so each of those, we do 4 project visits. And so we see every single one of those kids' project a minimum of 4 times between, about March-ish and fair. And some of them we see quite a bit more. I know some of the rabbit kids, I think I went to their houses 7 or 8 times to make sure, because they have to be within the ounce perfect going into fair.
Right. Yeah.
So new teacher, it'll be a little bit different this next year.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Only 20 projects per person if it's that sticks out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you contribute the kind of the rise of participation? What's changed? It seems, in many ways, we talk about, the greater Lassen County area kind of losing people overall, the school district kind of, staying plateau and fighting against going backwards as far as student enrollment, but yet there's a growth in this program and these kids taking animals. What do you contribute that to?
I actually think it stems back, to be brutally honest, to COVID. And I think that when COVID wasn't a thing anymore and people went back to their real world, kids wanted an opportunity to participate in absolutely everything that they could. And for those kids who didn't think that it was a possibility or a probability for them in their lives, that their eyes were opened after COVID, that kind of anything is possible. And I think kids jumped into it a lot more than in prior years when maybe they wouldn't have. We had a phenomenal ag teacher that I know that you know very well, Alex Whitney, who was a part of our program for 4 years. Yeah. And that fresh growth and excitement, I think, really did help fuel our program as well. Her leaving was definitely a hard thing for us, but very happy that she's moving on in her life. I think those two things kind of played a tandem role in the increase of the members in our program. And I think kids are realizing more that they can do a lot of things. They can do FFA and FBLA and drill team and do them all and be successful. And so kids are taking advantage of that.
It's great to have a positive spin on something positive coming out of COVID. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. Because, obviously you don't hear a lot of positive things coming out of COVID, but, I agree with you that when a lot of times you don't realize how important things are until it's taken from you. And, I think that's one tremendous response is to have kids just jump in on everything. They can do everything. And these rural schools, Lassen High, Fall River High School, a lot of the schools that I deal with a ton, Bernie, they are all figure out Big Valley. How do we let these kids do everything? Because, there's not a ton of kids. And, one of the disadvantages of maybe small schools is that, people would argue there's not as many total programs. But what I think makes us unique is that they can participate in everything. Where in these big schools, kids kind of have to specialize, even if it's sports, for example, right? I can only play basketball because I've got to pretty much play it year round in order to make the team. In these rural schools, you put out the effort and there's always going to be someone to support you to make sure you can do it all, if they're willing to put in the work, which is amazing. Good job.
It is amazing. And I think that those of us who coach leadership events like FFA and FBLA, we work really hard with the kids to get around their sports schedules. And so for every speaker or team that I have, we practice a minimum of usually 2 to 3 hours a week. And so for every one of those kids, sometimes it's a 6:30 a.m. morning practice, sometimes it's lunch, sometimes it's after school. It totally depends on their availability with all of their other involvement. And so it does alter and change and makes it a challenge sometimes, but we want every kid to have every opportunity that they can have.
You were just talking about bragging about Alex, which I agree with you. She's amazing. But also, I'd say you and Don are pretty incredible. I want to say it was about 2 years ago when I visited your guys' classroom. I've had a lot of experience with FFA kids, and then those FFA kids that were in that room were incredible, which actually doesn't surprise me because I think almost all of them are incredible. But the FBLA kids was something that was new to me. And being a small business owner myself, I just loved that there's, that type of a program. And I want to commend you and Don for just, pumping out some amazing kids. Those kids are engaged, and I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but usually a school asks me to come speak. I've spoke at Lassen College, Shasta College, your school, Fall River High School, Bernie a little bit. And usually you're pulling teeth to get a kid to ask a question or to engage. I mean, it's so... And I remember with all those kids there, at some point you guys, have any questions? And oh my gosh, I think we just ran out of time, and they would have kept asking questions for another hour or two, I feel like. So they're definitely not just going through the motions doing that. They're actively engaged and passionate about everything that they're doing in those programs. So again, that starts with leadership. So I'm going to segue right into 21-22 Ag Educator of the Year, right? Isn't that?
Thank you. Yes.
Which Yeah, so that's the entire state recognition, correct?
There's, I think, around 1,100 ag teachers in the state of California. And if I'm not mistaken, there's only 8 or 9 of us in the state who've ever been recognized. So pretty cool honor. And
That's
I think
pretty amazing.
Thank you. I think the neatest thing about that is I'm not one of those people who needs a piece of paper to tell me that I'm doing a good job or I'm doing my job right. But the fact that a kid nominated me and spoke up on my behalf and turned in the application, and that I was interviewed by a panel of 24 students, randomly pulled from the entire state of California, and they interviewed as well. And then when I received that recognition, it was pretty neat. And especially my daughter was a freshman, and to have her there at the convention with 7,500 other people and to hear her scream and holler when my name was called was a pretty cool moment. So very blessed, very blessed.
That is so cool. I didn't realize it was student driven. And then the interview process, that makes it even more special. I mean, don't be wrong. Getting nominated by your peers is also incredible. We're just talking about how kids historically and traditionally don't really go out of their comfort zone for something like that. So that, you're right. That makes it even more special. Congratulations. That's amazing.
It was definitely the most rigorous interview I've been in my life. They had me sitting in the center and they were all around in a circle, and it was like rapid fire questions for about 45 minutes. So I was definitely sweating by the time I got out of that interview. But a really neat experience. And so this last year, I was actually able to run that interview for this year's recipient and was there with the kids and helped develop the questions and to watch them get interviewed. So it was neat to be on the flip side of it as well this year.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So how do you think the kids overall, getting back to the fair, how do you think they did financially? I know we grossed more, but we had more kids. It felt like the auction prices were down just a little bit. So how did the kids overall do in your program as far as did any kids not cover costs or everyone cover costs? Kind of talk us through that a little bit.
That's a really valid question to ask. And so you always have, as you have increased enrollment in kids participating, and you only have so much money that the community can in turn donate, so to say, back to the members. It does dilute the waters a little bit more as far as the profit that some kids receive. And so I know, for like example, the champion steer this year was from Westwood, California. And I know that she did lose actually a bit of money even after selling for a decent price. When you become as competitive as you are in our fair, you have to invest some money to make some money. And so even winning champion, I know that she was down. For example, my 2 children show sheep, and my gift to them, to their college fund, is they pay for the animal. We pay for the feed and the bedding and fair supplies and all the other stuff. And my son spent a little bit more on his lamb. My daughter went as cheap as possible to make money for college. And so she profited okay. My son made, I think, about $200 for 5.5 months of rigorous work. Right. So that can be tough, but it's the chance that you take.
It is. It absolutely is. And, that's what I love. That's why I love supporting the fair. Is I just feel like it's just a little bit of entrepreneurship for kids, right? So you just hit it on the head, right? You spend money on an animal. You can take it one of 2 ways. You can say, hey, I'm going to keep my costs as low as possible, but I might not place as well, or I'm going to really go after a great animal, which means I've got to go to a top breeder. I've got to go spend more money to buy that animal. And then, of course, we've got to and then there's supplements, and you got to feed it really, high quality ingredients, and all those things add up. And at the end, what I love that they're going through that process. Do I make any money or not? It's amazing to me how many kids that aren't in that program go enter life with just, in my opinion, virtually zero money skills, zero. And so I just feel like this is. So far, this is like 4D chess compared to, the kids don't know how to play checkers when they get out, right? And so, anyway, I love that component of it. So, on that side of it, like kids that are, I also, I'm not when you're at the fair, we usually concentrate. Our company concentrates on lambs, pigs, steers, things that you can then we turn around and have the animals processed, and then we give all the meat to our employees. And it's just incredible. Kind of a great full circle thing. Supports the community, supports our employees, kind of a win-win in our book. But I also really applaud the Lassen Fair for, I'm as a buyer, I'm glad that they pared it down a little bit, got rid of some of the turkeys. And now that might not be popular with some people that love those animals. It's nothing against the certain animals, but I do think the rabbits still give the goats, still give them a low entry. And then rabbits you can keep, some people don't have the blessing of having property. So Can you talk us through just a little bit about how you get kids involved that maybe live, right in town, don't have, or maybe in an apartment, don't have that ability to have an animal. How do you support those kids, and kind of talk us through that a little bit, please?
Of course. So one of the things that I love is that those numbers are increasing for the small animals. And although it does make it tough when you're sitting there and turkey after turkey, they walk across the auction ring. The nice part about it is we have a larger increase in kids who are from the city setting who are showing. And it's really easy for them to show, market rabbits. It's 3 rabbits. And I have a series of cages that have been donated to me over the years from different 4-H and FFA families. And I keep them on my property. And then whenever the kid is going to show, that cage is donated to them for the duration of fair. So that way they don't have that initial expense. And all they have to do is pay for the rabbits themselves and then their feed. And so they're probably invested just under $200 in those rabbits by the time they go to start. And our Plumas Bank will actually do loans for kids as well, who are first-time investors in fair projects, or repeat kids who have spent that money before going into the next year's project. So they do have an opportunity to do it, even if money is tight. And then the chickens are great. They only have the chickens about 5 or 6 weeks or so. And you can keep those in, the blue kiddie pools that you get from Walmart or Ace Hardware. And you can put those guys in your garage and raise them up nice and easy. And so I think once a couple of kids did that, and our non-typical ag kids saw that it was a possibility to do that while living in town, those numbers definitely increased, especially with having those resources available for the kids. And what a neat opportunity, that's amazing, right? Because every kid needs to learn responsibility, caring for something else, being empathetic for another animal and human, and also that process of the loss when the animal goes, I think is very difficult for a lot of kids, but I think it's a strong life lesson in the end. And the investment of time that you give another animal, and to see that success at fair, in the show ring, and on auction day is really neat to see.
Yeah, you touched on such an important component of that gets lost a lot when we talk about it, and that is, basically the animal is processed when this is all over and turned into food that we all eat. And I see so many families and so many the perception could be, oh my gosh, how could you do that as they're eating their Big Mac burger, right? And they're just with a complete disconnect between where the food is coming from, and because they're not involved in it or don't know about it, almost they feel like it doesn't apply to them. So anyway, I think that's a super important lesson, along with the financial part of it, is just kind of where does our food come from? And there are people out there working really hard to make sure we have all the food that we need. And that's kind of ties it all back to a very local thing. So, getting back to kind of that gateway where, kid takes a rabbit, can kind of keep it in the garage, that kind of stuff. Does your program have the ability for a kid going, hey, I've done rabbits a couple years, I've saved up some money, now I want to do a pig, or I want to do a steer? Is there, at Fall River, for example, there's some ground that the FFA controls that they can do that. Do you guys have something similar like that for kids that want to step up?
We actually do not. And so we're one of the few schools, especially in a rural settle area that we are, that does not have a farm. We're very locked on all sides of us by the river and housing in town. And so that does create kind of a problem. My first 2 years of teaching, I taught down at Firebaugh High School. And then before that, I did my student teaching at Lincoln, that has the largest high school farm in the state of California. So it was definitely a transition to come here. But we have plenty of students and people in our community who are willing to allow those students who want to raise an animal on their property if they would like to. And usually it's completely free of charge. They just keep the facilities clean because they want to see kids be successful and have those opportunities. And to kind of touch on, right, and to touch on something else that you said about the disconnect with some people in our food industry, one thing that I told my personal children their first year that was showing, when you're in fourth grade and you bring your lamb to the pen to say goodbye, it's really hard. And I tell them, right, I say that lamb would have been marketed for human consumption, whether or not you raised it. But that lamb was so lucky because it had you. And so for the last 5 months, it was washed and walked and loved on and showed affection and, a little bit of empathy and love that it might not have had to that extent that it would in a large production industry. And so I teach them that they gave that animal a gift, so to say, in the life that they did have.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. That's a great added perspective because it's so true. It's absolutely true. I did it. That's why it's so important to me. I raised animals all through 4-H and FFA. My kids did it. And it's such a powerful thing, and I feel like it's our obligation to give back through that process because it was so rewarding to me. But those animals are like, they're like family. Mm-hmm. They're like family at the end. Yeah, I mean, I remember being very emotional at times and you obviously have favorites and some that are, just tremendous. And then I've had some steers that, quite frankly, I was pretty happy to let them loose and go, because they were just poops the whole time. So anyway, they all have unique great personalities
for sure.
Yeah, they definitely do. Do. Yeah. Okay. So, do you guys have any kind of visionary type things that you see where your program is going, or things that you're excited about that you're working towards, or anything you want to share at this point with us, Liz?
Okay. So I think that our program really, truly did hit a high peak too around 2016 to 2019. We had 5 state championships over 5 years. And we even had a national title that we won, which is the only national title that our school has won for a leadership team.
Okay, so as a leadership team, I was going to say, can you elaborate on what it was specifically? Was the state and national champions?
So the first championship was in 2016, well, in the last so many years. And it's in the veterinary science team that I coach. Okay. And then we were third in the nation that year. And then we had a floral team that went back. And they were third in the nation as well. And then we had our forestry team go back, and they were 10th. And then my vet science team went back again in 2019. New group of kids, right? Once they win a state title, they compete again. And we won the national title in 2019, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it was neat. Wow. And then COVID hit. And while we were riding this high of excitement and our veg crop team won, and we had all these great things going on, life kind of, slowed down for a little bit. And when we started back up again, and we talked about the increase of student involvement and fairs, the intensity that we had with some of those kids may not have been quite the same. And I think kids had a way with school to, I think lazy is probably a mean word to say, but they kind of got a little lazy with school. And so coming back and hitting 3-hour practices a week from the beginning of September all the way through May was tough for some kids to transition back into. And we've been very successful. Our Parley Pro teams were 6th in the state this last year, and almost all of our CDE or career development event teams that we coach were our top 5 every single year consistently. And out of over, 330 programs in the state, that's impressive in my opinion. But that intensity hasn't been quite as fierce as it was back in those years. So we're definitely focusing on that. And sometimes when you have a program like ours that's growing as much as it is, you want to provide more and more opportunities for some kids. But at one point, you have quantity over quality. And so we have so many things that we coach and so many teams that we offer, and to give them all their just due to be competitive at all of the field days and conventions that we take them to, you only have so much time in the day. So that makes it tough. But one of the highlights where we're increasing a lot stronger than I think we ever have before is our involvement with our individual youth leaders. And so we have 2 students who are regional officers this year. There are 6 regions in the state of California.
Nice.
Yeah, and we have 2 who are regional officers, and then we have a lot of students who've been attending the Washington Leadership Conference the last couple of years, which is neat. It focuses on service before self, and then you create a service learning project to bring back to your community. So we have kids who are engrossed in that. We have kids who have gone to the Changemakers Summit, which is another conference preparing kids for like state leadership roles. And a cool thing is our 2 regional officers were actually selected to be delegates for the national convention for this coming year. So think about it.
Wow.
There's 104,000 FFA members in the state of California. 36 of them are selected to be national delegates. 2 are from Susanville. And so I think
amazing.
When you look at it, our kids
That's
are
so cool.
They're doing great things. And this group of kids that I have that are taking advantage of every conference, they even had some that went to Philadelphia this summer to a next gen conference. They're taking advantage of all these opportunities. So we're growing and growing and growing, but having, I think, that peak in a team, you have to have 4 to 6 kids who all peak at the same time together. We've been really close the last couple of years, but not quite to that champion level again. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So backtrack just a little. Were you involved in FFA growing up? And I think you went to school in Auburn and then Chico State, right? So can you talk us through kind of what introduced you and what made you want to be an ag teacher?
Sure. So I actually grew up originally in Natomas in Sacramento. And as a kid, I swam year round. I was into all of our sports. And then my parents moved us to the little town called Ophir outside of Auburn my freshman year of high school. And I remember signing up at Placer High School for classes, and they said, "Do you want to take bio or ag?" And no joke, I asked, "What is ag?" I had no idea at the age of 14 what ag was. And I took that class, and Mr. Ken Martin was my ag teacher. And he just showed me the family that you can have and the growth that you can obtain in such a youth organization. FFA is the largest national youth organization in the world, and it focuses on leadership, not farming, which everybody thinks it does, but it's leadership. And I just found that passion. And by the end of my senior year of high school, I knew I wanted to be an ag teacher and be able to impact kids the way that it impacted me. And I got married young. I got married at 18. And so while my husband was serving a couple of tours overseas during Iraqi freedom, I worked my tail through Chico State while living at Beale Air Force Base and started my path from there. So definitely different. So when kids say, "I don't really know what it's about," I go, I was there at 14. I have somebody literally define to me what exactly it was, because I had no idea.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So, at 14, you move up there as a freshman, which, by the way, that had to not be easy.
No.
So did you go all in ag and FFA? Were you in Parley Pro and all that, or you just kind of dipped your toes in it and went, "Hey, I love this, but limited interaction"? Tell us about that.
Well, I had a teacher who was an incredible instructor, and who would take me or our members to anything that we really wanted to go within reason. But the concept of coaching was not something that I think he was as familiar with or as invested in. And he was an incredible man, but it was really difficult when you went to contests and you consistently placed at the bottom because you were not as prepared as other teams. Individually, I was very successful in the extemporaneous public speaking contest. I went to states a couple of times and that's something that you can kind of do on your own. But I saw really successful teams. And back in my era, it was really Bear River. Bear River was the school to beat. And they're incredible now. And of course, that's where Alex went also. And so I knew I wanted to be that teacher for kids where they could be successful and they could gain as much experience as they possibly could, because I knew what it was like to want that also and to not necessarily have all the opportunities to get to that level. And so I think that's part of why I go gun ho and I go as fierce as I do, is I want every kid that can to have the opportunity that I may not have been given as in depth as I would have hoped to have had as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So, I was in Parley Pro, and I've shared this story with a couple people, but going through high school, going through college, especially high school, I was just very much a introvert, still am, don't like the idea of getting up and doing public speaking would be like for most people, like the worst thing you could ever have me do. And through FFA, I got into Parley Pro. My uncle, Ken Hutchins, was the ag teacher there forever. And then my parents were like, "Oh yeah, you're going to do Parley Pro." I'm like, "I don't even know what Parley Pro is." And then my uncle was like, I think you would be a good president. And I saw a couple, our advanced team doing it. I'm like, I could never do that. Fast forward to, of course, doing it and then doing it for 4 years. We won a couple of state championships. And I'll tell you that Parley Pro experience for me did more for making me comfortable speaking in front of people, probably did more for my career, more for my ability to lead teams of people than anything I did in high school and college combined. So that experience of just having to run meetings, right? That's a big component of it. But then more importantly, you have to be able to argue every topic from both sides, whether you agree with it or not. And I think that's, obviously, because people that don't know, it's a point system, and you have to have good arguments for, you don't just stand up and say, yeah, what he said, I'm going to, copy that. That doesn't get you any points. So you have to add value to the debate, basically. And I think it's so powerful for kids to, there's so much, what's the right word? I don't want to get into politics, but there's so much, you're either in this camp or you're in this camp. And people just get so rooted in one side or the other, whether it's politics, whether it's a certain issue that people are debating. I think what's beautiful about Parley Pro is that you are forced to learn both sides of the argument, which gives you empathy and the ability to at least understand where other people are coming from, right?
Correct.
And so it's just great. So can you expand on that just a little bit and some of the other things that these kids are getting exposed to? Because, I did Parley Pro, but I didn't do the extemporaneous speaking. And then you said vet science, and just a little bit about what each of those things is about for the kids.
Absolutely. So there's a plethora of leadership development event, or LDE, and CDE, which are career development event teams that are offered in the state of California. At Lassen High School, we have our agriculture mechanics team. And those kids are given like a project that they have to complete in a time frame using arc and MIG welding and then oxy welding. They have tool ID. They have a written general knowledge test they have to do. And every year there's another component. Some years it's plumbing. Some years it's electrical. And these contests usually run around 6 hours for the kids to compete from start to stop, nonstop. They go completely through. And then we have the veterinary science team that I coach. They have, around 500 or so pieces of ID or more, everything from sugar gliders to Angus cattle, and then all the equipment and parasitology that is included in the medical and vet industry. They then have a general knowledge test that comes out of a 1,000-page textbook. And it used to be a nice little question bank of like 330 questions. And then I had a past student of mine who's now a veterinarian in Washington who was 8 points from a perfect score at state finals. And so they wanted to make it harder. And so now we have a 1,000-page textbook that they can pull anything from. And they also have to perform practicums in front of you. And so They have a series of 10 of them every year. There's steps that you have to have memorized, up to 12 or 16 steps word for word. But every scenario that you come to when you get there will be completely different. If it's giving an intramuscular injection, at one contest, it might tell you, how many cc's, which fluid, you have to select the correct needle and gauge, and then you have to administer it in the correct location. And so it's more than just basic memorization. And then when we competed at nationals, they also had a team skit that they had to do. They told you like the category, what it was about. And so you had to become an expert on it, but you had no idea what your skit was until 15 minutes prior. And you went in a room, they gave you the topic, you got graded on how well the team worked together for the 15 minutes preparing. And then they were in front of a panel of national recognized veterinarians and had to give their presentation. They also did writing prompts at nationals, which is another pretty cool component. And then we have a vegetable crop judging team, and you learn to ID vegetables, weeds, seeds, insects, you name it. And then they're given a series of plates of vegetables. So for example, if it's tomatoes, there'll be 4 plates with 4 tomatoes on each plate, and you have to be able to place them in the correct order and then give a set of reasons as to why, using correct terminology for that specific type of a vegetable. And each one has very unique terms for all the things you judge. We also have had floral design. We will again this next year with Becky Struthers as our new ag teacher. She actually, when she competed in high school, they were 3rd in the nation for floral. So she's coming back, and they have ID that they learn for tools and the plants themselves. And then they have a test that they have to take, and then they have to make a series of designs, whether it's vases and corsages and boutonnieres, in a very timed fashion, given certain criteria along the way. And then we have our parliamentary procedure team, which is an 11-minute debate. You have to be able to be presented the motion that you were given. Each person has to do their required motion and an additional and 4 debates in that time. And you have to make sure that that motion is handled in correct Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary law fashion. We have our extemporaneous public speaking, which is my favorite individual contest. And you draw 3 topics. You have 30 seconds to pick the topic you want. At the end of the 30 seconds, you have a half of an hour. And in that half of an hour, you are allowed 10 minutes of internet research. But you are allowed to bring 3 resources with you, whether it's notebooks with properly cited websites and textbooks. And you have to write a 4 to a 6-minute speech. And so at the end of that, you just have bullet points on an index card. You're up in front of a panel of judges giving your speech. We coach prepared public speaking, where kids become an expert on one topic, and they write a speech that is 6 to 8 minutes long, and they have to memorize it word for word and answer questions, obviously, that pertain to their essay at the conclusion. Impromptu public speaking is a great contest specifically for sophomores, and that's one kind of similar to Extemp, but on a very small version. They draw 3 topics. They have 30 seconds to pick one. They have a minute to think, and then they respond to the prompt for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And so since that specific concepts inception of that contest, Susanville FFA has had an individual speaker in the final 6, I think all but 1 year. And so really competitive in that one. We coach Creed, where the students memorize the 5 paragraphs of the FFA Creed and then answer questions. We have job interview, where they get to pick a potential job, and there's a series of criteria, and then they have to write an application and a resume and a letter of intent for that job, and they go through a rigorous interview process. And so, and then this last year, we also had livestock judging, which is what it sounds. And so you have, 4 steers or 4 pigs or 4 goats, and you have to judge them in the correct order, and then you have to give a set of reasons as to why. And they also take a general knowledge test as well. So those are the main ones.
So that awesome.
Yeah.
That's so incredible.
Each of those that we coach, we practice 2.5 to 3 hours a week with every one of those teams. Some of the speaking teams we can practice together, but definitely they work hard from the first week of September to the first week of May, no stop.
Yeah, that's just, well, and then I would say, a little biased, but I think egg teachers, people have no clue how much time you guys are spending outside the classroom, right? They have no clue.
Yeah.
And then so what you haven't talked about, right, is the 3 hours. You have talked about the 3 hours per week, and that sounds manageable to a lot of people. But what you haven't described is then all the traveling that you guys do. You load up in vans, you drive all over the state to go compete in these events. So can you give us the listeners some idea of how far you're traveling and where the state convention is, where the regionals are, and just kind of the sectionals, and just kind of talk us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we start our year going to Shasta. We go to the Shasta College Field Day. And then we also have our sectionals, which is in Fall River MacArthur for our opening, closing, and BIG contest. And then from there, we have contests as far north up at Tule Lake, which is virtually the Oregon border, right? Yep. All the way down. Yep. I think the southernmost contest we go to is state finals for the CDEs in San Luis Obispo. But just like last spring alone, I traveled 14 out of 17 weekends, to put that into perspective. And that's a lot of time away from your family. I was blessed that my kids were also in high school, so this was one of the few years I got to take them with me. But normally you're gone quite a bit. Right. So for our public speaking, our sectionals is here at Lassen. Our regionals is at Chico State. And then our state finals is in Fresno. But for our field day teams, they go to everywhere, like I said, from Tule Lake to San Luis, and state finals are in San Luis Obispo. And then our regional meeting is for the FFA kids is in Chico. And then our state convention alternates. The last 2 years, it's been in Sacramento. And so the next 2 years will be in Ontario, which, although Ontario is a lot further, I absolutely love going to Ontario over Sacramento. The last couple years, it was difficult walking the kids to and from the Golden One Center to the hotel afterwards with the lack of cleanliness of some of the city streets at night. I'm trying to be as politically correct as I can. So it was a little difficult. It definitely safer, believe it or not, in Ontario. And then the kids have an opportunity to maybe do a conjunction with Disney or California Adventure, Universal, or something fun along the way. So that's pretty cool. But we go to 26 different events throughout the year. And lately we do a lot more community services than we've ever done before too, that give kids an opportunity to do some stuff that's a little more local if they're not able to travel and compete with us year round. So everything from last year, we've hosted our first ever Susanville FFA Halloween Fun 5K at Ranch Park. And we had 30 kids along the way set up with candy. And we had little signs that my leadership class made with cute little Halloween jokes along the way. And so, and it was free. We were so lucky. Cross Freedom donated the 100 shirts for us and made the shirts for the first 100 people who finished. And the candy was donated from the Lassen County Office of Education. And so our kids just worked real hard to put that fun event together, which was pretty neat. And so we've been doing a lot more of that. You'll see our kids everywhere from the Educators Gala to Schaefer Elementary School's Halloween Festival and needing some youth volunteers. The kids have really done a lot more in the community, I think, than they ever have before, which is a blessing. And I think it teaches them a lot about giving back to the community that gives to them. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So can you contrast, like, on the FFA kids, FBLA kids, kind of what, how many of them, I'm not asking for exact percentages, but your educated guess on how many go the 4-year path, how many go to a JC, how many go and get jobs right out of high school?
Okay. So in the past, we had a lot more kids that went straight to universities, to 4-year universities, than ever before. And we had a statistic back in Holly Egan's days before she retired that we had Susanville FFA members from the high school were more likely to go to a 4-year college and complete a 4-year college than any other member at Lassen High School. But I know that FBLA has brought a whole new realm of involvement to those universities as well. So I'm not sure in the last 6 or 7 years how that statistic has changed. But I do know that we have a couple this year that were going into the military of our graduating seniors. The vast majority of them were going off to community colleges, a lot to LCC, to Shasta, TMCC, up in Oregon. And then we did have a few who were traveling to universities across California and beyond, which is pretty cool to see. So I don't have exact percentages, but they're all going into some form of furthering their education or going into like fire camp programs or Butte College's welding program.
Yeah. At Hack Creek Construction, I would say our most successful employees that, obviously we have a little bit of everything. We have people that work in construction for a long time and then make a change and come to us. But I'm talking about the kids that come either right from college or right from high school or right from a community college. The best luck we have are kids that are involved in some sort of ranch background, whether they worked on a ranch or whether they, their family were lucky enough to be involved with family that was on the ranch. And I just think it's a work ethic thing primarily, and a ownership mentality, personal responsibility that, somebody's got to take care of this. With those kids, we're finding there's virtually that's not my job. Not going to do that type thing. They see it needs to be done and they do it, which is amazing. I guess what I'm kind of wanted to get your advice on is, how do we recruit these kids for, a lot of kids I see that take the FFA route, they're going straight ag. And of course there's nothing wrong with that. But how do we get them thinking about construction as an alternative? Because what we look for is people that have that personal responsibility, have a great work ethic, have a great attitude. They have a yearning for learning, right? So they want to learn, they want to grow in their careers, they want to make an impact on the community and on the company that they're working with and their teammates. So I've talked to a lot of kids and I'm like, what are you doing? If they're in the FFA program, I'm like, I'm going ag, which great. But how do we interest them? Because they have all the skills, they have the leadership and that personal responsibility that we want. How do we interest them in construction? What would be your advice to me on that?
Okay. So this year was actually a really unique year. I was also one of the senior class advisors with Rachel Vincent, who's a phenomenal human being. And I think I had the largest involvement we ever have had of 4-year completers in our program because of the connections I had with those seniors. So we actually had quite a few who were splintering off into medical and other areas that maybe were not as ag driven. Even my own daughter is going to a college and not majoring in ag. And I think one of the cool things I did this last year that I'm going to challenge you to be a part of this next year is in my agri-science honors class. I have a very nice group of juniors or seniors that are very driven individuals. And one of their questions they asked me this last year, they go, I don't know what I want to do. I know I want to do something and I want to do something great, but I don't know. I don't know what opportunities are out there. So I had 8 different industry people come in over 8 different days and give them presentations on job possibilities. We had CAL FIRE in here. We had people who were ag educators or put on state fairs. We had environmentalists that work for the state. We had all kinds of different people who came in and presented to the kids and showed them career opportunities. And it was really neat because I think it swayed quite a few kids into different paths. So I think you need to, I think the kids maybe don't realize that it's out there. And when they go to like career fairs, you only have so much time to sit and talk with the kid at a given period of time. So coming in and actually doing something with the kids, like an activity and a question and answer session, but showing them what a day in the life is like. I think it was really cool when you did come into the leadership class and they got to see that. What a day in the life kind of like was for Hat Creek. And I think that if more of those kids saw that, I think it would really pique their interest. Because even my son, he's going to join the military. He listened to CAL FIRE and he's like, wait, somebody gets paid to fly drones and to carry fireballs and to go and to drop them for backfires, and they make that kind of money. And he's like, that sounds kind of cool. And so I think some people just don't realize the opportunities of those jobs until they're put in their face.
Okay, well, you challenged me, challenge accepted. Okay. So you need to give me those dates when they come up and I will be there for sure. Okay, that's fantastic. And one of the things I want you to tell them when they ask you that question, like they don't know what they're going to do, I would share that the one thing that I knew for certain when I was a senior is that I wasn't going to be in construction. So that's probably the best advice I'd give, would say, keep an open mind. And then another thing that I'm telling young people, and my kids in particular, is that passion is great. But I think to a certain degree, we've done a disservice to kids and telling them, follow your passion, follow your passion. I would say a better way would be to follow your competencies, because it doesn't matter how passionate, for example, I can't carry a tune in a bucket, can't play any type of, I'm totally, I don't know what the right word is, but incompetent in anything musically. Okay. So if my passion was to be a country music singer in Nashville, I don't care how hard I try, it's not going to happen. So I feel like kids are naturally good at certain things. All of us are. And what's one of the things that we do at our company is try and put people in their natural strengths and try and remove the roles that their weaknesses are in and push them more into what their natural strengths are. And, I think that's one of the things that I would encourage your kids is just, find what you're really highly competent in. And then passion comes when you start becoming really, really good at whatever it is that you do. That's when passion builds in my mind. So
I think that's very well said. Very well said.
So is there anything that you can think of that we haven't talked about that we should talk about?
Gosh, I don't know. I think we highlighted, Susanville FFA is on its 89th year of being a part.
Nice.
So, and California FFA is going to be celebrating their 100-year anniversary in just a couple years here too. So a lot of big, exciting things that are coming up. And gosh, that's a good question. I think that one stumped me. I don't know what else to really address, except I think the community service thing is huge for us. If there's ever a need in our community for somebody to step up, I know FBLA and all the other organizations do as well, but our kids are a phenomenal group of humans that just love to give back and are very respectful and well-mannered. And if people need that extra added service, we have quite a few of them who are willing to help with that. So FFA is centered around a 3-ring model. And a good ag program will have FFA, their SAE project, and the classroom component. And here at Lassen High School, we're a firm believer there should be 4 circles, and the 4th one should be community service. And so we require that kids have so many FFA activities, and that at least one of those does need to be a community service. So the more opportunities we have to give back to the community, the better.
On a side note, we have our Christmas party, our company Christmas party each year, and we have it at the fairgrounds here in MacArthur. And in the past, several years ago, we were using, various restaurants to cater it and had great results with that. But one year, our local FFA had an annual pie sale, and they make these apple pies. They're just incredible, massive fundraiser. I mean, they would raise several $1,000s selling these pies. And I can't remember exactly what happened. They had I think it was a post-COVID issue or a COVID issue where they're missing a key ingredient and they couldn't get it. And they had to cancel the pie sale. And that was about the time we were having an issue with the restaurant that had been doing the catering. And so we asked them about, well, what do you guys think about doing the food for our Christmas party? And there's about 200 people at our Christmas party. So it's a pretty big ask. It's not. And then I think the first year we asked for steaks, which nothing like making it super difficult for them.
Right.
And so obviously there were some dads and some moms involved in that too. It wasn't just the kids, but the kids rallied, did an amazing job. And then of course, instead of paying the restaurant, we paid the FFA program. And now for the last few years, it's been their largest fundraiser through that. So I'm the first to tell you that FFA kids are, our experience have been every time we've asked for them to help with something, and then we usually tie some sort of donation back to it that helps their program. But even if we weren't offering that donation back, I guarantee they'd be the first kids to volunteer and how can we help and how can we be there? So yeah, I definitely, want to agree with if you have a community need, it's a win-win thing. You get involved, you get to interact with our future, and that's what I'm so excited about our FFA kids is they're just the best and brightest of what this country's future is all about. So well, Liz, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's been incredible getting to talk to you. Appreciate how meaningful what you do is and how impactful it is. I think that what you do is God's work, for lack of a better term. It's just these kids are, they just have such tremendous opportunities working with you and Dawn and the overall program and the other ag teachers that are working with you. And we see it at a lot of the events that we go to, and then obviously at the fair. What those kids do at the fair is just incredible. And then all the other, I didn't even realize how many events you guys had kids involved in. That was just it's kind of shocking to me. So congratulations on great work.
I'm very blessed to be surrounded by such incredible kids, and they fuel, your heart and your passion. And I'm a firm believer that success breeds success. And we just have 100%. This great group that just continues to grow. And so I'm going to ride this excitement of life as long as I can, because I get a lot of fulfillment and happiness. And, my heart is very full in the career that I have. So I'm very lucky.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you for your time.